We said in the previous session that the only life process that the virus is capable of doing is reproduction. In this session, we will learn how viruses reproduce. Viruses are not cells, and they need host cells to reproduce. Viruses cannot be called a species because they are not made of cells. A virus is only composed of DNA or RNA nucleotides, the genetic material covered by a protein coat. So, it lacks most of the organelles that characterize a typical cell. Viruses need host cells to reproduce, we said. The first stage of viral reproduction is the recognition of a host cell. When the virus finds a host cell, it adheres to its surface, attempting to either enter the cell or inject its genetic material into the cell membrane. The host cell can be either a plant cell, an animal cell, or a bacterial cell. In the second stage of viral reproduction, the virus enters the cell, or in some cases, the virus's genes are injected into the cell. But in both cases, the genetic material of the virus will get inside the cell. Once the virus genes are inside, they take over the direction of the host cell, turning it into a virus factory. The viral genes get inserted into the genetic makeup of the host cell, and the host starts to replicate, including the viral genes, whenever it goes through a replication cycle. So, this is how the virus will be able to multiply inside of the cell. The new viruses will break out of the host cell, ready to find a new host and repeat the cycle. So, the steps for the reproduction of viruses are: the virus enters the cell. Each time the host cell divides, it also copies the virus's genetic material. The virus's DNA or RNA nucleotides that have been inserted into the host cell's genome will start to replicate whenever the cell replicates on its own genes. When the conditions are favorable, the viruses will become active in all of the host cells at once. And finally, viruses break out of the host cells to find new hosts. Many human diseases are caused in this way, including colds, influenza, measles, mumps, polio, and rubella. Influenza affects the respiratory system of the organism. Measles causes red spots to appear on the skin. Mumps cause the salivary glands to become swollen in one or both sides of the face. Poliovirus causes paralysis in some cases. And rubella, or the German measles, is caused by a virus that causes the appearance of a pink rash on the body of the organism. Viruses do not just parasitize animal cells. Some viruses infect plant cells, such as the tobacco mosaic virus. Let's review. Viruses are not cells. They are made up of genetic material surrounded by a protein coat. Scientists do not all agree that viruses are living organisms because they do not perform all of the life processes. There are three types of viruses: one that attacks plant cells, one that attacks animal cells, and one that attacks bacteria. And finally, viruses cannot reproduce unless they are inside a host cell, which is the living cell of an animal, a plant, or a bacterium.